Live every day like it's gonna be your last because you never know what's about to happen tomorrow. Hey everybody, how's it going? It's your host Hannah and welcome to Refreshing the Idiotic, your favorite weekly podcast. To get to know me a little bit better, I'll be asking myself a question that hopefully by the end of the episode you guys will be able to answer as well. Today's question is, what is your favorite meal? Mine is breakfast because it helps me set my morning routine up. It usually sets the tone for my day. I like to eat something healthy and filling, like egg, rarely cereal, sometimes oatmeal with a little bit of cinnamon and dark chocolate. That is amazing. I think that it sets my day. So if I'm making a sunny side egg, for example, and I break my egg, it's usually a pretty good reminder that my day won't be perfect, but it'll still go pretty well, especially if the egg still tastes good after. Anyways, let's roll the intro music and get this episode started. So, for today's episode, we're going to be talking a little bit about how I got into this journey, what the definition of mental health, mental illness is, and some extra key terms that I think are pretty important to get to know before we get started with the rest of this podcast. So, before I get started in everything I wanted to talk about in this episode, I wanted to talk a little bit more about my journey with this stuff. Like everybody else, I've technically been dealing with mental health my whole entire life, but more in depth, I've been bullied most of my life since elementary school. If I'm being honest, still until now, it's just I don't see it as much anymore because I found my ways to cope, which I'll talk about in a later episode. But I've been struggling for a really long time. So I have my fair share of stories that I'll be sharing throughout this podcast. Anyways, I joined my first youth group at about 10 years old, like almost 11 years old. So probably just about when I started middle school, grade 6. And in this program, I got to go to a major youth conference for a weekend, which I was so surprised I got to go to, but it was so worth it. We got to stay in cabins the whole weekend, but that's not what we're talking about today. During there, we got to meet the speaker from the Canadian Mental Health Association, and the lady who was speaking, she was asking everybody questions about mental health, and I had no idea what she was talking about, to be honest. I was so lost, and I was guessing out random answers when I actually had the courage to speak out, because before I used to be a pretty introverted person. So as prizes, she gave us these stress balls shaped as green brains, which are actually pretty cool. I actually have mine in my hand right now. I use it pretty often when I'm stressed out about something, whether it be school, work, home. Um, yeah. So she was talking about it, and I had no idea. Again, like I just said, I had no idea what she was talking about, but I was kind of going with the flow. I used to be a very introverted person, so I was pretty shocked at myself when I spoke out, especially because I was guessing the answers. And that's kind of what started off my journey through mental health. I wanted to know what it was and how I could deal with stuff. And fast forward a couple years, I want to say roughly beginning of grade 8, I had my first panic attack. Now, this was the scariest thing in the world. Like a lot of people say, I genuinely thought I was about to die, which is pretty scary because my panic attacks come in forms of chest pain. They used to be including blurry vision, dizziness, major headaches, and chest pain. Now, chest pain and a little bit of dizziness I still have, but I've gotten pretty good at coping with them. So, I had this group of friends and I got dizzy and my vision was starting to blur and I was in the middle of a presentation with them. And all of a sudden, I'm about to collapse. So, I lean against the chair and my friend, one of them, was like, "What's wrong with you?" And I'm like, "I can't breathe," because I felt like my throat was closing up. And I barely had a voice to say anything out loud, and so we had to stop the whole entire presentation. I got sent down to the office with my friend, and we sat there, and all of a sudden, everything was fine. This would have been like maybe a minute later after I reached the office, and everything was fine. And I was like, what just happened? And in my family, there is a history of heart problems. So I got freaked out. I'm like, was that a heart attack? Because that's what you hear when you hear chest pain. And on top of that, I was doing lifeguard training and I was just starting it. So I'm like, wait, this is all of the symptoms from a heart attack. So am I not too young to have a heart attack? Anyways, after multiple tests and talking with the doctor for a very long time over the course of maybe 2 years, I'm still talking on and off now, but we've got it pretty much managed. We found out that it was panic attacks and anxiety attacks, and I'm coping pretty well. Now I attend all the mental health, mental illness webinars, seminars, whatever you name it, I'm probably there. I'm a big fan of Bell Let's Talk Day, and they have these filters. I use them 100% of the time. Like, anytime I'm on Snapchat, I'm using that filter to make sure that I'm donating. I do a lot of fundraisers, so if I ever do a fundraiser, feel free to like email me and let me know if you wanted to donate. Actually, just so I'm constantly trying to raise awareness and funds to donate to mental health awareness. I actually recently did a project with a couple of friends where we ran game nights and played cahoots where we would explain each mental health disorder, um illnesses and such. So we raised collectively about $45, give or take, in about a week, which was pretty impressive to me because I did not think that a whole group of youth would actually be able to donate even $1. And so there we had it. We raised about that much money in 2 weeks, and it was pretty cool. Now, anyways, before I ramble on for the rest of the episode, we should probably get into more of the content. And every episode, I'll kind of share a little bit more about my story. That was just an overall kind of jump, I guess? I don't know what to call it. Anyways, I'm really sorry about my bird who's chirping currently. I guess you could call him my co-host. The co-host who doesn't really speak English. So I'm very sorry if you ever hear him in the background. Anyways, on to the definition of mental health. When talking about this topic, this is the first thing I usually like to get out of the way because it's something that I didn't realize until I actually got interested in mental health. Mental health is something that everybody has. It's not just like, oh, you have depression, you have mental health. Everybody has mental health. No matter who you are, if you didn't have mental health, don't quote me on this, but it would be like as if you were a robot because robots don't have feelings and mental health affects our feelings. It's basically just our well being. So, our thoughts, our feelings, emotions, our social connections, like introvert, extrovert, your ability to do problem solving and reaction to problems in general. And there's a whole big spectrum about it. Poor mental health, great mental health. It's basically in contrast, just like your physical health. Some days you're feeling really strong, some days you're feeling really weak. Sometimes you're like tired or you're sick. Those would be your days when you have a poor physical health. Sometimes you're down, you've seen a depressing thing. Those would be days when you have poor mental health. And then there'll be days when you're great, you're radiating positive energy, and those are going to be your days where you have great mental health. Next up is mental illnesses. This is something that not everybody has, so it's not just a generic statement, but it is kind of mental health. So, like I just mentioned, mental health is your well being. Mental illnesses affect your well being. So, off the top of my head, some of these things would be anxiety, depression, bipolar, schizophrenia, PTSD, etc., etc. I'll be getting into those in later episodes. So, these will affect your well being. So, your thoughts, feelings, interactions with people, your connection to people, your ability to problem solve, reaction to problems, everything that I've mentioned earlier. So, some generic symptoms might include like feeling useless or alone. You might be worried, fearful. You might have some crazy nightmares or crazy weight changes. Leading back to your physical health, it could actually affect your lack of energy. So sometimes when people have depression, they'll be like, "Oh, I'm just tired," but you'll actually feel tired. You just don't want to admit that you have depression. But tired can be one of the symptoms of depression. So it literally affects your physical health as well. So you might get extra migraines, or you might feel dizzy, you might have chest pains, just some examples to throw out there. So, for the last main segment of this episode, we're going to be talking about the two terms that I think are most important when talking about mental health. One of them is resilience, and one of them is stigma. So, a little bit of context on why I think these two are the most important. It would be because the youth conference that I mentioned a little bit earlier, obviously there was a guest speaker who was very experienced with mental health and talking about it. And me starting my journey, I had no idea what mental health even meant. Hopefully all of you guys know that now. But I had absolutely no idea, and I thought it would be idiotic to ask the speaker what these two terms meant because she was constantly bringing them up. So I because we were on a camping trip, we didn't have a lot of Wi-Fi. It was literally just turn on the Wi-Fi for the guest speakers so they could do your presentation and then turn it back off. So as soon as it was done and I was able to thank the speaker, I bolted back to my cabin, which is probably the fastest I had run up to that point because I hate running. And I Googled it. I was like, what does resilience and stigma mean? And I probably spelled both of those words wrong because I was only like 10. And I learned the definitions, so here they are. Resilience means to bounce back or push yourself further to do better after you've fallen. So, a quick example off the top of my head would be like literally any sport. So, let's just take skating because it's a quite difficult activity for some people. So when you're skating, you need, when you're first starting, you need one of those rolling things so you have something to rely on and you're not just going to fall on the ice. So you're getting okay, and then you fall in. Let's say you hurt your leg pretty badly, so maybe your ankle is twisted. So that's you falling backwards. And then gradually you'll get better and you'll push back and be like, oh, now I can skate. Maybe 5-10 years down the road, you've become a figure skater. A little bit more of a physical and mental example would be when I was a child. I feel like a lot of people should be able to relate to this. I was bullied, so I'm more of a curvy girl. And when I was younger, the body type that was accepted socially was straight. So just like skinny legs, skinny top, everything skinny. And so I was kind of ashamed in a way of my body, and I used to think I was really fat. So I wore sweatpants and I wore a hoodie, and that was it. Like nothing else. Even in summer, I was too uncomfortable to wear tights. And then because of that, I would get bullied, and then in my mind I would be like, why did these people care, and why do I have to dress the way they do because they have good bodies and I don't? Or and then later on, I kind of figured that it was okay to have a curvy body, and I slowly built it up. I slowly built up my resilience to accept, okay, this is what I look like. I'm proud of my body, and now I'll wear tighter fit clothes. They look a lot better. I'm a lot more confident because of it as well. The second definition that I wanted to share is stigma. Stigma goes hand in hand with stereotypes, so I just like to put one or two out there. So the first one, a little bit more mild. Canadians say all the time, no matter what it is. That is a that's just a stereotype. It's debunkable. I'm Canadian. I do not say it all the time. And a second one, a little bit more serious, is people with depression just want to die. That that is not true. People with depression just want to get back out there but feel like they can't. Just one way to put it. So, stigma would be a fear of telling somebody in fear of being judged. So, because of a stereotype, let's say. So, I don't want to tell my parents that I think I have anxiety because they're going to think I'm crazy or I'm lying, etc., etc. So, in a sentence, you would be like, oh, we want to break the stigma, we want to break that stereotype to say that it should be a normalized conversation. Before I get to the outro, I would like to mention that in this episode and all the future episodes, wherever I'm doing research, I will be linking all of the links in the description so you can always go back, check the facts, or see where my information is coming from. Just about wrapping up today's episode, what we went through today was the beginning of my journey, some of the work I've done, the difference between mental health and mental illness, and the definitions of stigma and resilience. I hope you guys learned something new today. And don't forget to leave me a voice message right beside the title of my podcast. There will be an option on the Anchor website where you can you can record a short recording of yourself telling me the highlight and lowlight of your week, and also answer the question I did as well today, which was, what is your favorite meal of the day, whether it be breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack, or dessert, or anything in between. Last but definitely not least, don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, share anything you can. Connect with me whenever my info is in the description. And hope to see you guys all back next week for another great episode. Bye, guys!